welcome to another edition of our Memory Lane podcast here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. This is going to be awesome. Today, my guest is a guy with a beautiful head of hair who tried walking on as a quarterback at Penn State. This guy has a hose, man. He could run somewhat fast. He built up quite a following. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in Chad No, not that dude. Welcome to Shane McGregor, a real-life former Penn State walk-on quarterback.
Thank you very much.
Shane, what's up, buddy? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm not too bad here on a Friday morning.
Thank you.
Doing great.
Thank you for enjoying my funky little introduction there.
I loved it.
You're a writer. How about my wordplay on that, buddy?
I thought it was fantastic. I knew where you were going right away. That's pretty good.
Folks, we're recording this the week of the Chad Powers craze, and these live on for months and months and months. Shane, our Memory Lane podcast, people might listen to this 3-4 months from now. But this is just a few days after the Eli Manning Chad Powers thing. I'm sure you've seen the video. I've seen it 30, 40 times. Shane, what did you make of Chad Powers?
Well, I thought it was hilarious at first. You know, it seemed like anytime the Mannings do something, they're pretty good at it, especially with the comedic side of things. And then it was like, oh my gosh, haluba hole. You know, I saw that. I mean, that was my second home there for about 5 years. So seeing the familiar confines of it, and then seeing him actually go through all the drills and all that kind of stuff, it was pretty funny. It was good. Yeah.
Shane was a walk-on quarterback to begin his career at Penn State. Back, 08, I guess, was your freshman year? Shane's from Central Cambria High School in Evansburg. And I struggle with this. Is Central Cambria, is that considered Central PA or more Western PA?
I don't know. I would say Central Western. I don't know. I would say maybe Western more. It seems like once you get up over that Allegheny front, maybe from Altoona, maybe it's more Western. I'm not really sure, but yeah, somewhere in there. We're
going to have some fun with this because the Chad Powers thing was amazing, and we'll touch on that a little bit more here in just a second. But the reason I wanted to reach out to Shane is because he was a walk-on quarterback at Penn State. I want to give people an idea of what it was like to be a walk-on, first for Joe Paterno, and then for Bill O'Brien, and then Bill O'Brien delivers some tremendous news to you about going on scholarship. So you have a great story, and we're going to get into all of that. But I want to go back to the Chad Powers thing. As you're watching all of this, I mean, just walk us through what it's like, what it's like from your perspective as a former football player, and you're seeing the spoof of a guy walking on trying to be a quarterback.
Yeah, well, it's a familiar process. I actually had a lot of friends who, tried to make the team, and some made the team as actual true walk-ons, through the tryout process. And seeing somebody actually, out there spinning it like he would have, I can imagine what, I don't know which coaches were in on it and which weren't, but seeing them out there, those kids are probably like, oh my gosh, and you heard a couple of them said, oh, he looks like he's 32 or something like that, which it probably was a treat for them at least, and thinking, who the heck is this guy, So, so seeing that all happen, it's like brought back some memories of, personal memories from people I knew, and even just throwing in that, I probably threw 1 million, 2 million passes in that indoor facility, over those years that I was there. So, it was definitely a stroll down memory lane, that's for sure.
Now, you were a preferred walk-on, right? You didn't actually have to try out like Chad Powers did, right?
So that'd be the one little difference. Yeah, I did not actually, though I was a walk-on, I wasn't a scholarship kid. No, I did have the preferred walk-on status there. So didn't make it through the actual tryout, but like I said, I did have a lot of buddies who did.
So explain to people, first of all, we're kind of from the basic level here. What is a preferred walk-on?
Okay, so that's a very good question, actually. Preferred walk-on would be somebody who is recruited, I would say, to come onto campus and be a part of the football team, but just not with a scholarship, like a full scholarship offer. So usually it's kind of the people who are, not like 100% bona fide great recruits, but somebody who could maybe develop into a solid college player, Division I college player, or somebody who's, maybe not ready yet for some reason. Or a lot of times, like especially with in the Paterno era with Joe, they focused on a lot of guys from the state of Pennsylvania. Okay, so ones who, maybe had a lot of good things going for them, and maybe they weren't quite as big as needed to be, a Division I scholarship guy, or maybe they got injured in high school and they, therefore weren't as highly recruited or something like that. Guys who kind of maybe slip through the cracks, but also guys who are willing to take, the undertaking of being a walk-on, because it is a challenging thing, especially when whenever you could maybe go somewhere else and play right away, or go somewhere else and get some money too.
And so what we saw in the Chad Powers video is they call them run-on, walk-on, tryout, and we see all these guys, they're out there looking for a roster spot. Now, you said you had some buddies who went through that process. Did you ever, were current players ever allowed to be in Holuba Hall and see it? Did you ever get to see it, like what that process was like for those dudes?
Usually they would have them, I think back when I was there, they had it more in the evenings, I think. And so a couple times I went, because I got to be very good friends with some of these guys. I mean, heck, Sean Baker, Jesse Maurice, these are guys who I really became friends with because it was almost like a symbiotic relationship. I wanted to throw all the time, like get reps in, because I felt like, I wanted to make as many reps as I could as possible. And then these guys were trying to make a team, and so they needed a quarterback to throw to them a lot of times. So it was almost every winter. We'd meet at 4 o'clock almost every weekday. And I got what I needed because these guys could run routes and they'd catch for me and all that. Because, my actual teammates, a lot of times they were very tired. Like you're working out, you're doing all your stuff. So I could get some extra reps with these guys. And then they had the benefit of having somebody to throw to them too, So, because of that, I got to be tight with them, and not every single one, but a lot of them ended up, making the team themselves. And even one of my roommates, he was our starting long snapper for a little bit. His name is John Rohrbaugh. Ended up becoming real tight with him, and he made it through the walk-on tryout. It's almost like every single kid has some sort of interesting story as to how they get to somewhere like Penn State, and then also what motivates them to try to make it, in a process like that.
Right, and it is cool. Very few make it, so we get their stories. It would be kind of cool to learn all these guys' stories, because most of them, I'm sure, were really good high school football players somewhere. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious though, and I'm sure everybody would want to. Was there ever any dude? I want to say like Chad Powers, but that is such a special thing because you got a 40-year-old guy. But was there ever a dude that walked into this walk-on tryout and everybody's like, what the hell is this guy doing here? He's like 34 years. What is going on here? Yeah. What's going on here?
Usually, nobody who was exceedingly old, like, what the heck is this guy doing? They're like, no shot. No one quite like that. I will tell you, you'll recognize the name probably. A guy who stood out as being like, whoa, he could do something, was Matt Lehman.
Oh, wow.
He was tight end for us. He made it through the actual straight walk-on tryout. And I remember I was at that one and I watched and I was like, oh, you could see right away.
Is it that obvious? Is it that obvious that when you show up, the one or two guys, it's like, okay, that's the guy.
Some guys, you could definitely see the eyeball test, obviously. Now, they still have to move. You have to be able to catch, or, if you're doing, or whatever your specific position, requirements are. But a lot of it is eyeball tests. They have you run the 40 right away, so you can see what looks like it could be a good, prospect, but then you got to actually, make sure you can play too a little bit.
Imagine being an 18, 19-year-old kid at a Holuba Hall, and this dude walks in. I got a hose. I know it's 60, 65. I mean, could you? This is serious stuff. I can only imagine these dudes are taking this extremely seriously.
Nervous as heck too.
Yep. Nerves are good. Yeah, nerves are good. But could you imagine just what that would be like? I got to think that nobody was in on it except for James Franklin, but they all got to be looking like, what in the world? This dude's throwing 60.
Where did he come from? Yeah. Well, I thought right away of you hear the stories of guys who maybe go play minor league baseball or something, and they don't use their eligibility. If I'm in there in that room, I might be thinking something like that. But also you go into the drills, man. This guy is whipping these passes around here too. Usually walk-on tryout, usually you don't see many quarterbacks making it through the walk-on tryout. But to have somebody like that spinning around, that would be, the kids are probably like, woo, just couldn't imagine that happening.
Now, you're a teacher, right?
I am, yes.
What do you teach? What do you teach? We'll get into your background fully in a minute, but what do you teach?
Sure, yeah. Ninth grade English, actually. So I'm a high school English teacher, ironically, actually back in Evansburg, Pennsylvania, at my alma mater. Something I never really thought I'd get into, but I started coaching at the high school level, and then just became a teacher. Yep.
And I want to get into all that because Shane was the high school football coach for a while. But the guy, I think it was Danny O'Brien, the offensive analyst, says, where he goes, I'm homeschooled. You make good grades? No. My mom was a teacher. She wasn't very smart. She could coach. Again, like as you're watching that, to me, that little 5 seconds, my mom was my teacher. She wasn't very smart. That's just comic gold, is it not?
Oh, he's good. And the way, and Eli with the little not accent, but the way he was saying stuff, and oh yeah, that was fantastic. Yeah.
I can't look. The last thing I'll mention about Chad Powers, I want to see this become a TV show. I'm sure you've seen Napoleon Dynamite and Uncle Rico. I could throw a ball over that mountain. I got the TV show. Uncle Rico. The actor's name is John Grease. He was Laszlo Olipheld from the Val Kilmer movie way back in the day, the science movie. But John Grease's name. He's got to be the dad. He's the dad. He left Chad Powers when he was a baby because they got divorced. Mom's raising. I mean, you can get this Holly Hunter kind of Southern accent woman who homeschool, but maybe she struggles teaching him.
She knows the heck out of football.
But she's getting out there and she's spinning. The possibilities are endless with this to me, Shane. I got to think you get some. You're a writer. I got to think you get some smart people on this that they could figure out a plot.
What was he doing after his homeschooling career was done? What's he doing then? What was his years in his early 20s like? What was he? I think he got a lot of possibilities, man.
Oh, my goodness. All right. So, okay, I do want to talk about you and your career and what it's like to be a real-life walk-on quarterback. You get there, and you end up being a success story because you get the scholarship at the end of your career. I want to make sure people realize that from Bill O'Brien. But you get there, 2008, Joe's like, hey, where you from, kid? I mean, what is it like beginning your college career as a walk-on?
Well, the wild part, I almost think, is a lot of walk-ons have interesting stories to even get there. For me, at least, the funny thing I say, two little funny bits, is the first place that I actually applied to for school was Penn State, actually. The only reason I applied to Penn State is because my mom, I was getting recruited by some smaller schools, of course, but my mom was like, well, just in case football doesn't work out and this whole recruiting thing doesn't happen, and just in case you need somewhere to go to just be a student, let's apply to Penn State just so we have, if we can get in there, then we'd have somewhere to fall back to, right? And sure enough, I go through the whole recruiting process, and I was talking to Ivy League schools, some Division, 1AA, Division 2 schools, and then I get this offer, and I was like, oh, I can't turn this down. And then it was, oh my gosh, I'm actually accepted already. I applied way back whenever I wasn't even thinking about Penn State football as an option. So it's very interesting how you get there. I also say too, it's amazing how interconnected the world of recruiting is. We took not actually Matt McGloin, but actually three. His name is John Kelly. 3 different walk-on quarterbacks in my year, and I like to say that I probably think that Penn State would have taken no walk-ons that year if one other kid would have made a different decision. Just about 50 miles west of me, a kid was growing up in Jeanette, Pennsylvania. His name was Daryll Clark, and Penn State went all the way in to try to get him, and eventually they lost out in the recruiting battle with Ohio State. But if he would have come to Penn State, they probably would have had no need for quarterbacks in our class. So I probably would have never even had that as an option. So just one person's decision totally changes, what kind of happens for a lot of people.
But that place was too country.
Yeah, how about it? Yeah, but it was quite all right for me though.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so all right, so as a walk-on quarterback, what is life like? You're there, Daryll Clark.
Yeah,
Pat Devlin. What's life like for you?
Yeah, so I didn't make the camp roster to start. So it was what was even more challenging was I literally came in week 1. So everyone had a month of playing football, and I was just getting thrown in. And I realized, man, I just get all my equipment, all this stuff, day 1, Monday, and it's day 1 of the Coastal Carolina week 1 week, and I'm walking out there, and I realize I don't even know the cadence. I'm a quarterback here, and there's so much stuff I don't know. And no one was really stopping to hold my hand through the process. It was a lot of just learning on the fly. You had to just pick stuff up as you went, and you were gonna mess up. Especially because now I'm playing. Heck, last year I'm playing against District 6 high school competition, and now I'm playing against the Big Ten here. So it was a lot of just trial by fire kind of stuff. But I did have some people who really did help me. I'll never forget, literally first day, done with practice. My head's still kind of spinning. And I have my little locker there in the back corner where all the freshmen were. And, like a lot of people didn't even notice I was there, just because I'm one of 120 guys and I'm just another number out there. But I'll never forget Jordan Norwood, actually. He walks by and he stops and he says, "Hey, you new?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually." He goes, introduces himself, shakes my hand. He says, "Good to have you here." And there's just a small thing like that for me, in the position that I was in, really meant a lot. That first year was tough. It was very tough. It was not just on the field, obviously adjusting to things, but also adjusting in the weight room. Oh my gosh, we used to have, they would call them Friday lifts for the guys who didn't make the travel squad. So it was most of the walk-ons and guys who weren't on the 85-man roster who would go to the away games. And, we would just get absolutely annihilated, Talking about the toughest workouts of my life. Oh, there were some nights we couldn't sleep. Some guys would go to the building and try to sleep there just so they wouldn't miss the lift, because you were even more trouble if you missed the lift. And, it was darn near torture. But I tell you what, it developed some mental toughness. That's for sure. And you mentioned earlier, I did end up, earning a scholarship. Every single guy in my class that we came in with, which we had a lot of walk-ons, every single one who stuck it all the way through and ended up graduating in 2012 actually ended up with a scholarship. Every single one who went all the way through. And I love that kind of little tidbit because it shows that if you do really want it, if you are willing to be persistent, a lot of times it does pay off.
It's amazing, really. I do have to ask you, did you have the beautiful long blonde hair when you first got there, or did that develop throughout the career?
That I kind of fell into that one, ironically. Yeah. So
because the reason I ask is because Shane had a beautiful head of hair, man. I'll tell you what, it was some of the most beautiful long blonde hair. You don't still have it, do you?
No, it's short now. Yeah, but I had it long for a while.
But it would have been easy to recognize you as one of 120 dudes with the. You see what I'm getting at? I mean, whatever you can do to stand out to where you're not just one of 120 dudes.
Yeah. No. So we actually couldn't. We couldn't have, couldn't have long hair, couldn't have beards under Joe. That was his rules for the team. And so it was actually right whenever that 2011 season was ending. I kind of fell into it. I kind of let my hair grow a little more than usual, and somebody was like, "Oh, it looks nice," and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll keep this going." And then,
dude, you're like a male you were like Hansel. He's so hot right now. Did you ever consider trying to become a Derek Zoolander kind of guy? I mean, that was a good look, man.
Maybe a profession change here. Yeah. And then I started with the whole Sunshine nickname came into play. Just Ronnie Bass, remember the Titans. And I'm thinking, actually looking back, I'm like, oh, if I could have had this NIL stuff, I probably could have made a killing on
Dude, I know. Man, you seriously.
10 years too early.
Penn State fans, this 10 years ago. A lot of Penn State fans will remember Shane McGregor. If you don't, Google Shane McGregor 2012. You'll see NIL would have been a big deal for you. So,
I know, man. I could have made it, but no.
There were outstanding quarterbacks. I think Daryll Clark is one of the most underrated Penn State football players of all time. He went 22-4. Did some spectacular things. Went to the Rose Bowl, beat LSU in the Capital One Bowl. But so you're playing alongside these guys.
Yeah.
What did you learn? What are you doing in practice every day as a walk-on? You running the scout. What are you doing to learn?
Yeah. Well, so that very first year, I was all eyes everywhere. I mean, we had Daryll was playing and he was pretty much the starter, but then Pat Devlin was still there. And so watching him, and then Paul Ciansolo as well, being I think he was then a senior third stringer guy. And so I just literally tried to soak up everything I could. Just being a eye in the room, just looking at it all, because I figured if I can learn from them and what they're doing right, good. If I can see what's going wrong, good. Now then I had to put it into practice there. But Daryll was real nice, especially in that, I guess, preseason into summer of 2009. I was matched up with him as a lifting partner, and he kind of, I don't know what, took me under his wing but at least we just had a bond there where he went out of his way to help me in ways that he really didn't have to.
Daryll was jacked, man. How good was Daryll in the weight room?
Talk about a humbling experience, man. I'm like, this guy's throwing this stuff around. I'm over here piddling around with, half the weight sometimes, but I had to just say, hey, it's little by little kind of a thing, But he was a great guy to have around. And then and the ironic thing too is I had Matt McGloin, who was also a walk-on quarterback, was in my class. And so we, the whole 5 years, we were kind of working up at the same, kind of at the same levels. And he was just a little bit ahead of me all the time. So seeing Matt go through some stuff, becoming a starter, getting to play, all that kind of stuff, it was an interesting thing as well.
What was it like being there with Matt? I mean, you want to talk about just coming out, and Matt McGloin was a 0-star recruit,
Yep.
no scholarship offers, wound up starting 7 games in the NFL. My all-time favorite Penn State football player since I've been covering the team was Matt McGloin, because I root for those kinds of guys, the guys that are not going to get every opportunity. Matt McGloin took everybody else's opportunity and made the most. What was Matt like? Was he just a real cocky, confident guy off the field, the same way we saw on the field, or not?
Yeah, I mean, he always had an edge to him, that's for sure. And I think that's what helped him, honestly. He had that confidence in himself. And sometimes I would look at him and be like, I can't believe you're this confident right now, man. But like, it's one of those things where if you convince yourself, I guess that's the name of the game, And but now
looking back on it, now you can believe Matt was that confident, right?
Oh yeah, fiercely competitive. And he was an athlete. Like, he had success all the time. He's a great baseball player. He played basketball. So he was used to being good, used to excelling. And it's one of those things where I think a lot of the positive self-talk. What's the story you're telling yourself? Because you're going to go through some dark times, especially if you're a walk-on, trying to achieve an almost insurmountable thing. Like, you're going to go through some adversity. So, I could picture it. He's telling him, I'm good. And just if you hear yourself say that enough, and he was too. That's the thing is, I know he didn't maybe look like much, but he had an arm on him, and also he could think. He was a very smart kid, a very smart quarterback, and that's what really helped him develop, especially when O'Brien then came and all that, and then getting to the league. It's a lot of what he could do with his mind, as in addition to obviously being able to put the ball where it needs to be.
Having been a guy that you went through the recruiting process and you walk on at Penn State, how did Matt McGloin slip through the cracks that much to not be getting any offers?
I would say, I think if he wasn't going to Penn State, I think he was going to Lehigh. I don't know if you already said that already, or if that's known information. So a solid 1AA program. He was all of 6 foot, at 6'1" at best. Probably 200 pounds. Didn't run particularly well. All those things that you see at tryouts. It's almost like the whole Tom Brady, the Brady 6 story is. It's almost an ineffective way to really look at quarterbacks. The hard part is to evaluate a quarterback's mind, and to really evaluate, what can they do when they're actually playing football. Some guys can throw to 70 yards, but they might not be able to, read the defense quick enough or make adjustments quick enough. Whereas Matt, he was good enough to get the ball to certain places. I would say he had an above average arm for his size and stature. But a lot of it is what are you going to do? All those intrinsic things that are honestly hard to see in a tryout, or hard to even see, kind of on tape, whenever other things stand out. So I can see how he kind of slipped through. I was almost, I wasn't as good as him in high school. So I think I slipped through in the same ways. And then we just kind of got there. And then if you're not giving up, man, you're just going to outlast some people as well.
A sensational experience at Penn State. You got to play in some games. You got on scholarship. You were heavily involved on campus. You're kind of really, Matt is the ultimate walk-on turn success story, and we've seen Baker Mayfield. But in terms of those guys that don't become maybe star players, you had about as good of an experience as you could have possibly hoped for. Is that accurate?
I would say so. Yeah. Looking back, I'm extremely thankful. Yep.
So why do you think it all worked out for you that way?
I think a lot of it was not being afraid to kind of put yourself out there a little bit, not being afraid to be a little different. Obviously I had my friends on the team, my football community, all that kind of stuff. And then, my student athlete community that I was kind of a part of. But then I remember looking around, probably my second year, and I'm looking around there are so many cool people here on this campus, and I just want to get involved in some other ways. Now I had some time constraints, obviously being a student athlete, but I was I just want to do some more stuff. So I got more involved with stuff in my major, like the college communications and all that. And I got to be, connected with some people through that. And then I got more involved with, eventually I actually danced in Thon, which I think I was maybe the first football player who did, or one of the very first few. And that was a big experience. And then I got involved with the homecoming organization. I was on the homecoming court, and it was pretty much just saying, like, I'm only going to do this whole college thing one time, and I want to try to make the most of it. And especially, with such a great place like Penn State, I felt like I had to take advantage of it as much as I could.
Okay, so the question then, if you would have, were you recruited by some PSAC schools? You mentioned Ivy League schools. What are a handful of other places where you maybe could have gone?
Like I took a couple of visits to Harvard, Yale, Duquesne. I even thought about going even smaller and trying to play right away, like play a lot. But yeah, kind of in that middling level. Yeah.
So what's always interesting to me with the walk-on who is very talented and goes to the big school, you probably could have gone somewhere and played a hell of a lot. You might have been able to be a 2 to 3 year starting quarterback at a Shippensburg or what. Folks, in case you can't tell, Shane's very, very bright. He's getting recruited by Harvard. That's not a surprise. But maybe you could have gone somewhere where you get to play. Me personally, I would play. I was never close to this kind of decision, but the way my attitude is I want to play. I probably, in your shoes, would have gone to Shippensburg or Cal PA where I could have played. Some guys go the other route, and it did work out for you. How difficult is that decision to, hey, you're going to Penn State, you're going to be on the field with 107,000 fans, but you may never actually play, although you did, versus, hey, you go somewhere else, you could be a 2-3 year starting quarterback.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't consider that. I didn't really think about that sometimes because I'm a competitor too. Like I want to be the guy out there. I want to be the guy playing. For me, at least how I guess my brain was kind of ticking at the time is I wanted to shoot for the moon. I wanted to play at that top level. I had a dream since I was like 8 years old that I want to play Division I quarterback. And for a while in high school, I never thought I'd even get a chance just because I wasn't good enough. I didn't think. But to finally have enough of the stars aligned, so to speak, to get a chance, I was like, I got to do this, And then when I got the chance, got the offer, I still kind of drug my feet a little bit just because I knew it would be a big challenge. But then I kept thinking about, okay, I could go to another school, which, hey, great programs all around the country and all different levels. I could go somewhere else. I could throw for 300 yards, 6 touchdowns, and win the game. And then at night, I'm going to turn on the whiteout. And I'm going to watch, and I'm going to say, man, like, what if I would have just tried? What if I would have gone there, And because of that, I was like, I got to go. And because of that same reason, that's why I stayed, because I wanted to shoot for the moon, try to slay the dragon, the biggest dragon there was. And if I made it, cool. If not, I'm going to have a lot of great experiences on the way. And the ironic thing is, like, I have no way to measure this, but I honestly think by going the route that I went, even though I literally played no meaningful plays in my whole entire career, like meaningful, so to speak, I think I became a better quarterback than if I would have gone, to another place and played in a lot of games, Heck, when you're the scout team quarterback, you're playing against, the first string, the second string defense. So I'm playing against, some all Big Ten, some future NFL guys, and it made me improve, and it made me improve a lot, And so even though it was, it's not maybe our offense or it's not exactly like game reps, I got to play a lot of football. I treated practices like my games. I want to go out there, I want to perform, and I want to do well, if only just for me. That was a big thing was, what am I doing this for? I'm not doing this for other people. I'm not doing this for, even outsiders, my family or anything. I'm doing this for me, And so what do I want? And I wanted to try to, climb that mountain and to do this thing and see if I could pull it off. And even though it didn't end exactly as I wanted to, I still think I got a lot of great stuff out of it. And, it was an experience that I wouldn't go back and change it, to be honest.
You end up getting on the field for 2 games in 2011. What was the first game? And just what do you remember about, you throw 4 passes for that season, you completed 1. Just walk us through the memories of being on the field when you got those chances.
Yeah, so it was actually probably a Tuesday before week 1. It was Indiana State, so this is week 1 of 2011. I remember vividly sitting in the quarterback meeting room, and Jay's just talking over the game plan, our Jay Paterno, our quarterback's coach at the time, and he's saying, if this goes well, Rob Bolden and Matt McGloin that, they were going to split reps pretty much over the course of the bulk of the main time. He said, and if this goes as it should, as well, like we should handle Indiana State well, Shane, you'll be in the fourth quarter and then we'll keep it from there, and him even just saying that so nonchalantly, like this is just what's going to happen. It was like, oh man, like that is what's going to happen. Or should happen. Like,
yeah.
I'm going to be in this game. Like it's not like, oh, somebody has to get hurt or something terrible would have to happen like for me to get in. It's like, no, I'll be playing in this game. So it was one of those kind of surreal moments to think like, all right, like I always prepped like I would, maybe get in, but like to actually have that realization that okay, I'm going to be in this game on Saturday was great, And then so I finally got in. And you're thinking this is like 3+ years that I've been doing this, thinking about what's going to be the first time, what's going to be like, And I don't know if you've ever seen For Love of the Game.
It's one of my favorite sports movies. I love it.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, it's almost like that. Clear the mechanism. Get in there, and it's like, what's it going to be like when I'm finally on that field? And you realize, like, yeah, maybe it's a little louder than usual, but it's still 11 on 11. You're still taking a snap. You're still doing everything that you normally do. It just happens to be with a lot more people watching, And the ironic thing was, it was garbage time, so it's handoff, And then we get to about the 3-yard line, maybe 3-4 yard line, and it's like 3rd and 1. So Jay just calls a sneak, quarterback sneak. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'll just get the first down, and then we'll punch it in then. And so I get the snap. I go to carry the ball and I realize, okay, the pile is still moving. And I'm looking down. It's like, well, there's the yellow line. That's the goal line. And all of a sudden, it's like, I'm in. Like, the ball crosses the plane, touchdown, And so it was one of those surreal things. I never even was thinking about, like, scoring a touchdown or anything like that. But all of a sudden, it's like, wow, not only am I in this game, but, I got a chance to get in the end zone there. So it was a cool little moment, No one really remembers it, probably besides me, but it was something that it's meaningful to finally see it pay off just a little bit.
When you work for 4 years like that 3-yard touchdown run, you have every right to remember that. And I see that you completed 1 out of 4 passes. I don't recall off the top of my head what game that was in. Was it in that game or was it in?
No, I didn't throw any in that game. That was Eastern Michigan actually.
Okay.
I remember throwing. It was a curl to the right side, and I honestly thought I blew out my knee because somebody came in, like a rusher came in from the left and like hit me kind of low. And to this day, I don't know how my knee is still intact because of that. So, I mean, I really didn't care if that was incomplete or not. I remember those were one of the incompletions, but then I remember the completion was like a 14-yard comeback to the left side. I didn't even throw it particularly well, but my receiver made a good catch and kept the chains moving, kind of thing. So
I want to ask you about. As you're working hard, you're doing all this stuff. In the back of your mind, are you ever thinking about a potential scholarship or not?
Yeah, I mean, I saw guys do that kind of thing. Guys who were walk-ons ascend up and become, like probably a lot of them actually. Guys who worked their way up through. It was almost going to be one of those like, if it happens, great. I'm not doing this just for that. Kind of a thing. I was in a good position, at least financially, because I had some academic money, and I could afford to, to pay wherever, and not have to, go on full scholarship quite yet, so I could play the waiting game a little bit. But honestly, once it finally happened, I wasn't really expecting it. I knew that I was a walk-on. That's just the way it was. And then when it finally happened, it was a big surprise. Yeah.
So, and look, my understanding is Bill O'Brien just called you into his office and tells you there's no video of it, right? There's no Eli Manning.
No. Well, the ironic thing was we were in the quarterback meeting room. I was with Coach Fish, Charlie Fisher, was our quarterback's coach, and I think it was Bill Cavanaugh pops in and he says, "Hey, like Shane, can you come down? Like Coach wants to talk to you." And I'm sitting there like, "Oh gosh, like what?" He didn't even say it in it didn't sound like a good tone either. So I'm walking down this hallway thinking like, am I in trouble? Like I didn't do anything wrong, did I? I'm thinking this is a bad thing, And then he sits me down and Coach O'Brien just tells me, he says, yeah, he's like, we want to put you on full scholarship and do all that, And it was like, oh my God, it was one of those things that like, almost like a full circle thing, I wasn't the starting quarterback or anything at the time, but it was one of those like, I feel like I really, really belong now. Did you start? Called my mom.
Did you start crying?
Oh gosh, yeah. I waited at least till I was outside his office, but yeah, called my mom because she'd been there from the start. My dad too, who's so influential in my my sports life and everything. that it was just like, I feel like we made it finally, because my parents believed in me too, enough to where, I could have gone somewhere else and maybe had a full scholarship, and not had to pay everything. So they helped me in that sense, and they always believed in me, sometimes even more than I believed in myself to start, so it was so nice to be able to call them and tell that to them and be able to share that with them.
Did your mom teach you how to throw a football like Chad Powers?
Yeah. My mom, who I don't think she ever played a competitive sport in her life, but she supported me 100% though. 100%. My gosh. Yeah.
Oh, it's such a great story, man. And I just want to give you an opportunity to say what you're doing now. I know you did coach high school football at your alma mater for a few years.
Yeah.
What's your life been like since you left Penn State?
Well, thinking about, honestly, now you got me thinking about the walk-on thing. Probably my first coaching job, I will have to shout out my friend. His name is Matt Baxter, who he came to me. We became friends kind of randomly, and he was trying to walk onto the team, and he wanted to be a wideout. And he honestly, and he would tell you the same thing, he did not know much about being a wideout. And but he was a good athlete, though. And so I worked with him a lot. And I like to think, like, that was almost my first coaching job. When I left Penn State, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I had an English and I had double major, English and print journalism. And I thought I wanted to write. I worked as a freelance writer for a little bit, but then I got snagged into high school coaching, actually. I ended up running into one of my old coaches, and then I went out for one practice. One became two became three, and then the rest is history. So I was an assistant for a while, and then I became the head coach here at Central Canberra High School, and I did that for like the last 5 years. And then I gave it up after last season. I just got some other stuff I kind of want to do because that's a big undertaking, that's for sure. And then in the process, too, I started as a substitute teacher, and then I went back, got my teaching certificate. And so now I work as, like I said before, a full-time English teacher here.
See, you were kind of close. Chad Powers is a substitute and a part-time carpenter. Did you ever do any carpentry?
No carpentry, no. Maybe it's a sign. Maybe I should pick it up,
Again, it's a cool story. What did you learn as a high school football coach that you did not know as a player?
Ooh, man. Well, it's one thing. I like to say I was a smart player because I could absorb information and translate it into what I needed to do, It's another thing to try to get other people to understand. They say, like, I guess the deepest form of understanding is when you can actually teach something, and teach something in a simple enough or an effective enough way to get it across to kids, So it's a lot built on relationships. That's one thing I like to think I have. We didn't even win a ton of games in my time here, but I like to think, a lot of my guys still had good careers, good solid experiences with Central Canberra football. Even though, we wish we would have won some more games here. And I've got, going all the way back to 2013 was my first year coaching, just right after I was done at Penn State. I've got some strong relationships with my coaching staff, guys who I used to coach with, and then, former players that become friends, that become, the lifelong relationships that you have, just like I had as a player, now I had as a coach. So.
You mentioned good, strong experiences. When you look back on being a walk-on at Penn State, and everything you went, it doesn't always work out as well for everybody. Some walk-ons, maybe they're on a team for a year or two and they move on. But when do you ever kind of just pinch yourself of, wow, I can't believe with everything you went through, getting on the field, getting all those experiences, getting to play, getting the scholarship. It really was. Now, you're no Matt McGloin.
Yeah.
but hey, with regards to 99% of the rest of the walk-ons in the world, it worked out pretty damn well for you.
Oh, I do say, like, I literally work and I teach and coached at the same high school that I went to and played at. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, was that a 5-year-long dream? That was real, right? I really did that, kind of a thing. And because it was such an amazing experience, and I like to think, anybody who gets herself in that situation, it's not for everybody, the whole walk-on life. But if you do, just go after it and work really, really hard. And if you do, and if you've got that, I want to say that grit, kind of that determination, that keeping that dream alive, some cool things can happen. That's for sure.
I love the story, man. I appreciate you playing along with the Chad Power stuff. It was such a crazy stuff. That's right. It's great. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, hey, what can I do with this week? Shane was a walk-on. He's the kind of guy that would probably enjoy having fun with all this stuff. And I can't thank you enough for playing along with everything. Great stuff, man. I wish you nothing but the best of luck, dude.
Amen to that. Thanks for having me on here, Cory.
All right, thank you, Shane.